Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I'm super excited. I have a new podcast guest to interview this morning, Chelsie Washington. Before we get started on that, though, I've got a couple of podcast episode updates. First, last Sunday's episode came out with Janice Scholl that's juggling money and motherhood. I thought might be a helpful episode to sort of go into the holidays with all of the Black Friday shopping and all of that sort of stuff. And then tomorrow on Thanksgiving, we have a special baking brownies while teaching math episode with Emily from Pie Dreams, where there's a little bit of noise in the background on that one because we're actually baking brownies in the episode, in the video, and then just talking about math and ways that we can teach our kids about math while we do that. And I think that's it. Let's get started on the recording for today. All right, so good morning. Welcome to the Allison Loves Math podcast. I'm super excited to introduce today's guest, Chelsie Washington. We were talking about a parent's guide to college admissions. So Chelsie is an academic advisor who's worked with parents and students on college admissions stuff. And she's also the host, which is where I met her. She's the host of the Weird Mom podcast. So we did a fun episode a little while back called Math Sucks, which if you know anything about me, you know I don't think is true, but we talk about it in many different ways from many different angles. And then today I'm super excited to have her here to talk about college admissions. So welcome, Chelsie.
Thank you so much, Allison, for having me.
So I guess let's just, jump in right now. College admissions are sort of, can be stressful for parents in general. And then you add into that all of the uncertainty and chaos of a pandemic, as if there isn't enough stress in parents' lives. What is some advice that you have for parents?
I would say, I know that obviously times are hard, like you said, especially, college admissions for your child is already a stressful time, but this just makes it even more stressful. But I want to say just breathe, take it step by step. I know it's overwhelming, but it's doable. It can be done. Thousands of students do this all over the country every year. And so it's just best to take it step by step and don't overwhelm yourself. And when you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, take some time, take a break, and come back to it. It's so simple, but it will truly help.
No, that's such good advice. It's such good advice for everything, I think, right now during the pandemic, is whenever anything's overwhelming, just take a step back and know that it will all work out and we're all going through it, and hang in there.
Yes, you are not alone. There's someone out there doing the same thing you're doing, freaking out. So don't worry about you. If you feel like you're doing it wrong or anything, just breathe. And then if you feel like you're doing it wrong, ask your questions to the appropriate people.
So we're almost at December now, which I know is late in the college admissions process for seniors. Mm-hmm. So for parents with seniors who are maybe have just applied or have yet to apply, perhaps, do you have any, sort of advice for them?
I would say definitely get on that. For seniors, the closer you get to the end of the year, it gets a little up in the air on whether or not you'll actually secure a spot at a college of your choice. A community college is a little bit different because most of them usually have rolling admissions, so you can apply all the way up until close to the start of the school year. At least here in Texas, I can't speak for other states, but but for universities, things like that, you need to, if you haven't already, apply now, because with applying for any college really comes more than just filling out an application. You have to get transcripts from your high school. You have to get sometimes letters of recommendations. You have to write an essay at sometimes. And then there might be a situation where, I know here in Texas, you have to have proof that you've had the meningitis shot. So you have to make sure you allot time for that to get that shot record in. So yes, the sooner the better. I'm not saying it's impossible to get into college in the second semester of your senior year, but just know you're up against other students who have applied early and have already gotten their documents and things in.
Right. Oh, that's good advice. I think, yeah, just the earlier the better. And you have a list of a lot of different things, right, that have to get done. So probably picking those first couple of schools, figuring out what that long list of things is that you have to do, and then jumping in. Now, is there, on that list of all the things that you do for college admissions, is there anything that sort of stands out as being more important than the others?
Aside from the application, because obviously that's how colleges are going to be notified that you actually want to be there. But aside from that, I would say if you're in college, because high school transcripts, they're usually pretty easy to get. So I'm not going to put a lot of emphasis on that. Just get that done. Don't let the easiness fool you and thinking you have a lot of time. Still get that high school transcript. But I would say if you're in college, is one that makes you write an essay. That takes time. And if you're not a strong writer, you definitely want time to focus on writing a solid admissions essay. And then also same with same with letters of recommendation. That one especially, because that involves some other people, right? So you want to give them time to write you a letter of recommendation so you can get it to your admissions counselor, or if they have to send it themselves, you want to make sure you give them time to send it themselves.
Yes, definitely. And I can vouch for that. For students asking for letters of recommendation, it can be really hard when you ask in the last week of the semester when teachers are totally swamped and then request that they get it in that same week. We really appreciate it when you give us as much time as possible for it, especially during the busy part of the semester.
Yeah, and if you are a person waiting on a letter of recommendation from someone and you haven't heard from them, it doesn't hurt to just nudge them and say, hey, just letting you know, the deadline is this day. I just want to make sure that you're working on it or that you've sent it. There's no crime and no harm in doing that, because this is your college admissions.
Yes, especially when you figure that teachers get so busy, and some teachers maybe requested letters of recommendation more than others. And if they're juggling a whole bunch of things, obviously that letter is the center of your world. You want to make sure it gets in, but you don't want it to accidentally fall through the cracks. So yes, a friendly reminder is definitely appreciated. And I'm trying to think, essays, college admissions essays. What advice do you have for writing those?
It's for writing those, like I said, if you're not a strong writer, because I know there's a lot of people out there that they get in front of an essay and they just blank. They don't know where to begin. If you know the college or the colleges that you're applying to require essays, or if you want to, or if it's like an optional thing for your college that you want to go ahead and do, that's why it's important to, start this process early, because you don't want to be waiting last minute for something that you're not strong at. You just got to be honest with yourself. So make sure you're going to, if your school has like a writing tutor, getting help on there. There's also probably tons of online resources that will help you as well with writing the essay. And just be yourself. Don't be super generic and, say something that they would want to hear. Just be yourself, because they look for, college admissions teams look for authenticity. And they want to make sure that you add value to their university or their college. So just be yourself.
I like that. I think sometimes the magic in like being yourself comes in the details in the essay. My daughter's taking a little creative writing class, and that's one of the things that they're teaching a lot in that. And it's funny, it's very similar. The more details you have, the more real things can feel, and the more you can actually come across in your essay.
Yeah, because, when you submit your application, that's kind of just like a fact sheet, right? You're stating your name, where you live, what you've done in high school, just like in a list format. But that essay is really a chance for you to sell yourself and come alive on a page and make it seem like you're more than just, whatever you said on your application. You are a human being on the application. So that's why it's important just to be authentic.
Exactly. That shows what makes you unique, right? And like you said, what value you can add to the school.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump to juniors, because I asked you about seniors, right? But juniors really are at the start of everything. Applications are not quite in yet, but you're at the very beginning of that process. So what is some advice that you have for parents who are maybe have juniors in high school who are at the beginning of all of this?
Okay, so this is prime time. This is where it all begins, right? So if you haven't already started looking at where you want to go to college, this year is definitely the time to hone in on maybe 2 to 5 choices that you want to look into. Definitely, if you can, visit your colleges of choice, at least your top couple. You might not be able to get to every single one, but just visit the ones that you really, really want to go to. And the reason why I say it's important to visit the college, because whenever you look online on a college's website, you just see basically their lifestyle photos, but they are kind of staged, and it's just kind of like the college wants you to feel invited, just from the website, right? But it's really hard to get a feel for that college unless you actually go there and you take a tour, or at least walk around on a self-guided tour and just kind of get a feel of, seeing yourself there. If you really go, like, you can apply to this college and it could be your first choice. You've wanted to go there all your life, but then you step foot on that campus and you're like, I just don't feel at home here. That's perfect. Like, don't feel bad that you don't feel at home there. That means that you should probably look into some of the other options that you had.
And it saves you a lot of time, because then you're not applying to a college that you wouldn't even want to go to. So it actually saves a lot of time after the fact.
Exactly, yes. And the time here is of the essence. So if you can save time in that sense, yes, please do. Accept the fact that you might not feel at home there and move forward knowing that fact. So yes, definitely visit the colleges. Look into their admissions requirements, because every college's admissions requirement is different. There's still like the same kind of framework of admissions application and probably submitting transcripts. Those are probably the two commonalities in all colleges, but everything else is based on wherever you want to go. So make sure you're looking into the requirements so you can start getting that in your mind and write it down, so that when it is time to apply usually sometimes the applications might open it as early as the summer before your senior year. So when you start getting those applications open, you can just, I already know what I need to get. I'm gonna go ahead and go get that from my school and get all these recommendations and stuff, and your application can be out as soon as possible, and then just, I'm not gonna say you have to know what you want to major in as a junior. I know that can be kind of difficult, but just have a couple majors in mind, and make sure, this sounds so simple, but you would be surprised. Make sure the college that you want to go to actually offer the majors that you're interested in. I cannot tell you how many times people have come to my college thinking that we offer nursing or engineering when we don't. And I know those are usually common majors that colleges have, but just recognize that not all colleges have that.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. They'll come and they'll visit and they'll take a whole tour and they're like, okay, well, I'm interested in nursing. I'm like, oh, we don't have nursing. So yes, please make sure the colleges you're interested in have your majors. And then also discuss, like, if you want to actually live on campus, especially if you're going out of state, what the living arrangements will look like, so you can start getting that together, because that's a whole separate kind of bill from tuition. And yeah, I think those are my main tips.
I think I like the advice about going to different college campuses, and as silly as it is that somebody would ask about nursing when it's not offered, at least they were asking at the tour before they were actually going through the application. So I guess in order of saving time, right? First, make sure that they have your major, then go visit them, and then apply. That way it'll narrow down the list.
Line up. And even then, like, I've worked with students who they'll actually apply. They'll get in all their documents. They'll put on their application, oh, I want to major in, I don't know, biology. And then they come here and they think, oh, I put biology because I didn't see engineering on there. I was wondering if y'all had engineering. And I'm like, no, what you see on there is all that we have. So yes, that's very important.
Oh, goodness. Yes. So advice for parents then is make sure that your child checks that as they're going through their applications, because something that might seem so obvious for us can easily get overlooked for them because they're going through this process for the very first time. Their friends are for the first time. They don't necessarily think about it. I'm sure if they thought about it, they would, not apply somewhere that didn't have their major, but they might not necessarily remember to think that on their own.
Yeah, especially there are students out there that are like dead set on a college, maybe from when they're a young child or maybe at the beginning of high school. And so it can be kind of heart-wrenching whenever they find out, if they ever, hopefully they don't get to that point, but if they find out the college that they dreamed of going to doesn't have their major. So just check into that as early as you can.
Right. And I think when you're in your junior year also, there's enough time between now and the application process that you can actually add to your application. There's still time to do extra work or extracurriculars, some sort of community service, all of those things that could make you a stronger applicant. So that's another helpful thing I think about looking into figuring out what schools you want to apply to now, is because then you can figure out, well, what criteria needs to be met. You still have some wiggle room to try to meet that criteria. Whereas, when you're in your senior year at this point, pretty much everything that you've done is set in stone. You just have to get that application in. So there isn't too much you can do in terms of changing how you've spent your time in high school.
Yes, definitely junior year is, if you haven't done anything extracurricular, that is the time you need to start doing some stuff.
And especially for students who maybe are, things have slowed down because of the pandemic, perhaps some of their activities have been canceled, they don't necessarily have to just sit at home and do nothing. Like, think about, what could you do in this new environment that could, well, one, I guess, just be of interest or help the community, all of those things. But all of those things that you think about can help the college admissions application as well.
Yes, for sure. There's definitely stuff you can do during this time. You just gotta be creative. And that's stuff you can put in your essay too. Like, I was supposed to play tennis this year, but things got canceled. So this is what I did instead. And that's fine. It's like I said, you're selling yourself whenever you're applying for admission. So make sure you sell yourself in a way that shows that you have value.
Yes. And I'm not an admissions officer, but I feel like I would like to read an essay like that with somebody who said, the thing that I'd worked towards got canceled. It was out of my control. So instead of doing nothing or just sitting and complaining, I chose to pivot and do something else instead. And I feel like that shows somebody who's proactive, and that's definitely, a quality that they would want in a student going to their college.
For sure.
All right, let's see. Other advice.
Other advice, since we're on the subject of like doing things outside of school, I always tell students, well, when I was working in college readiness, I always used to tell students whenever they were, thinking about applying for school, it's one thing to make all A's, be a really model student in that sense, know how to make the grade and have absolutely no or minimal extracurricular activities. But it's another thing to maybe make A's and B's, maybe like I'll say a couple C's, but really A's and B's, and then do some extracurricular things like sports or clubs, organizations, community service, things like that. The difference between the all A student and then the AB student that has a bunch of stuff that they do outside of school is that we're going to see that the A student, that's all they're going to know how to do is make good grades, which is good. That's why you go to college. But we all know college is more than just going to class. It's about an experience. It's about building a relationship. And the person that makes A's and B's and does stuff outside of school, they're probably going to be the ones to like add to the clubs that they already have at that university, or maybe even start their own clubs. They're going to be active in the college community. They're going to really be a driving force to help keep the spirit of that college alive. And so they're probably going to look at this person that makes A's and B's more than the person that makes straight A's. So I say all that to say, it's one thing to just make good grades. That's all great. And I, obviously encourage that. But make sure you're doing some stuff outside of school. A couple of years ago, I sat on a committee to help pick, because we have like a full ride scholarship at our school, right? But it's more than just a scholarship, it's a whole program that they have to do for their entire 4 years. So they have to do a certain amount of community service, they have to go to certain events or go to a certain amount of events. They had to meet with the scholarship committee like once a month. Like, it was very involved. It wasn't just here's money and good luck. It was, we want to keep seeing you, right? So I was on a committee to choose, because it was very selective, and we chose like probably like up to 8 students at a time. And so whenever I was on that committee, we would have to actually interview like the top 20 students that we chose out of the applications. And the things that they were telling me that they were doing outside of school was just amazing to me, and stuff that I never even would have thought of doing when I was in high school. I was like, wow, these kids are really like, I was a good student in high school. I made good grades. And I was in like one extracurricular activity, but these students, they made good grades. They had their own businesses. They were doing stuff in the city of Dallas, where the college is located. They were also taking care of their siblings, making sure they get them to school. They were doing so much, and it was really hard to choose in that sense who to pick for the scholarship. And that's where, the reason why I'm saying that is because it just goes back to, it's not about just making grades. You got to show that you can balance grades and doing other things, because that's how life is going to go. When you get out into your career, you're not going to just have one task to do at a certain time. You're going to have multiple tasks. You're going to have big tasks, and then you have micro tasks that you have to do. So I want to say that you can balance, so that when you go out into the world, you can be a productive human being in the job force.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And the other side benefit too is that you get to learn a lot about what things you like and don't like, because the more things that you try, the more likely I think you are that you'll find a major that you really enjoy and a job that you really enjoy. Whereas if you never really try different things and don't really have a lot of different experiences, you sort of just get stuck or pigeonholed into whatever the one thing is that you actually do.
For sure. And then my other advice would be, if you don't know what you want to major in, like you just have no clue, or you're just torn between 2 different things, see if the college that you want to go to offers like an undecided route, because usually that gives you maybe a semester or 2 to figure out what you want to do. They'll probably do some career exploration class with you, or some workshops with you. That way you can kind of figure out where you want to go as far as your major goes. Because once you start getting into your last, like your junior and senior level classes, that's when the actual courses that are related to your major start picking up. So you don't want to start wasting time taking classes for a major that you don't actually want.
Right. So I was one of those sort of scatterbrained college students who had no idea what they wanted to major in, and I think I changed my major probably like 9
that was
times.
Me.
So I would say though that if you don't know coming out of high school what you want to do, it's not the end of the world, right? Like you were saying, you could do undecided, or you could pick a major that maybe fulfills requirements for lots of different majors, so you have flexibility. And what I did my freshman year is I went in and I got as many of the general ed requirements done as I could. So that way I was getting classes done that would work regardless of what major I ended up choosing.
Yeah, so your first 2 years are just going to be the basic like math, math, science, things like that. So you have some time for sure, but still start honing in on what you want to do.
Right. And if you leave it off too long, which I did, I think I didn't actually declare my majors until my junior year. The one downside to that is that then you're short on classes and you have to take extra classes. And I had several semesters of taking additional courses from a full load, and it's hard. So whenever you can avoid that, if possible. I mean, it was worth it, once you figure out what you want to major in, then you just figure out how to get it done and you do whatever it takes to get it done. But whenever you can figure that out, just like a semester ahead of time, you can make your life a lot easier.
Yes. Work smarter, not harder.
Yes, exactly. Oh. Let's see. Before we go, actually, I know it's a little bit off topic from the college admissions, but I had so much fun being a guest on your podcast. Let's talk a little bit about the Weird Mom podcast. Can you tell us like what it's about and what inspired you to start it?
So Weird Mom Podcast is a parenting family type podcast where I talk about, usually with guests, just things that people don't really talk about when it comes to parenting or family, things that people maybe shy away from because they think, oh, I hope I'm probably the only one that thinks that way. Like the purpose of Weird Mom is to bridge a gap between feeling like you're an outsider and realizing, this is normal. And so I have that podcast where I'm currently in my 3rd season. Weird Mom came out of obviously this pandemic. Like I had been wanting to make a podcast for like a couple years. And so I figured this is just as good a time as any to get my podcast started and get established with how I'm going to do things systematically so that whenever I do go back to work physically, I already have something in place so I can kind of balance that with work physically. So so far, it's been really such a joy. I've met some really cool people, including Allison. She's taught me a lot of things about math that I didn't even know. Well, different ways of thinking about math, and I think that's what Weird Mom's all about. It's just giving new perspectives on things that people wouldn't normally take.
Yes, that's what I love about it. I feel like you're very real on the podcast, and I don't know, it's like embrace the weirdness. We're all weird in different ways. Nobody's perfect. And I love that it's just sort of an overall theme that you've got there.
Yes, that's why I named it Weird Mom, is because I want people who feel weird to feel
yes,
welcome.
I totally connected to that.
Like, Weird Mom, yeah, I'm weird. I want to come and listen to this. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. So before we go, where can people find out about you and your podcast?
So I have a website. You can go to weirdmompodcast.com. That's where pretty much all the general information is. As far as listening to the podcast, it's on Anchor, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and then Podchasers. So you can listen on one of those. I'll probably expand more in the new year, but for right now, that's what I'm doing. And then if you want to be a part of the community, I have an Instagram page. It's at Weird Mom Pod, and that's where I kind of interact with people the most on there. And then I also have a Facebook page where you can just search Weird Mom Podcast. I interact some on there, but it's not as active as the Instagram page. So either one, just come follow. I post a lot of funny stuff on there, just my thoughts. And yeah.
Perfect. And then I will, in the comments for this, I will make sure that I link to the Math Sucks episode that I did on your podcast too, in case anybody wants to listen to all the ways that math can make us feel weird and stressed out as parents.
Yes, very much so.
All right. Well, thank you for listening today. I will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.